Saudi Arabia versus Iran. How did these two countries end up hating each other? What does Iran want?
Saudis helped Saddam Hussein for 8 years. Saudis are funding terrorists who are operating in eastern Iran. So they started this sectarian message, not us.
And how is Saudi Arabia responding?
Nonsense. The Iranians are the ones who are exporting terrorism. They're the ones who are stoking the fires of sectarianism. They're the ones who are violating international laws and norms and acceptable behavior. And they are the ones who have been on an aggressive path since 1979.
How is this rivalry playing out in the neighboring countries within the region? Let us find out why. Saudi Arabia and Iran were not in bad terms. This was during the reign of this Shah. The Shah at the time had a vision of modernizing Iran by building industries, improving agriculture, and growing Iran's military. The Shah would often visit the United States to look for help in actualizing this vision. The US would supply technology, knowledge, weapons, among others. The Shah, of course, had to give something in return. He gave the US access to its oil deposits and even allowed the US to continue its military operations in Iran. The US also had a presence in Saudi Arabia where similar mutual economic relationship existed. So there was some parallels between the path of these two countries, therefore in a way they could relate. However, in Iran, a section of religious leaders did not like the effect that this modernization effort was having on their Islamic culture. They felt like the West was exerting too much influence on their country. For instance, Western culture had spread so much into the country that Muslim women stopped wearing hijabs. The Islamic clerics deemed this unacceptable. They would write letters to the Shah warning against this Western influence, but the Shah was not the one to listen. The religious leaders started to incite the public to oppose this regime, which in their opinion was hell-bent on eroding Islamic culture. And so, in 1979, a civil uprising occurred and the Shah was overthrown. At the center of this revolution was a man named Ayatollah Khamenei. Iran, now led by Khamenei, was largely Shia Muslims, while Saudi Arabia was majority Sunni Muslims. Let us pause for a moment and get a background of how Islam ended up with these two sects. In 632 AD, following the death of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, a dispute arose over who would take over from the Prophet. One part wanted Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law to take over, claiming that the leadership should remain in the family. On the other hand, another section of leaders felt like a successor should be elected and not necessarily letting the mantle stay within the family. The faction who wanted Ali are the ones who descended into Shia Muslims, while the faction that wanted an elected successor became the Sunnis. Today, the Sunnis form 80% of the total Muslim population, making Shias the minority. Now, Khamenei, which we have now established was a Shia minority, was very radical about the doctrine of Islam. He preached against deviation from radical Islamic beliefs, and so, when he led the revolution in 1979, he would send radio announcements to Shia minorities in the neighboring countries to also stage a civil uprising against their Sunni-led governments. This led to the civil uprising in Saudi Arabia, where the Shia minority took to the streets. The uprising led to the bombing of Mecca, Islam's holy city. This Shia-Sunni sectarianism was one of the factors that led to the Iran-Iraq War in 1980. At the time, Iraq was led by Saddam Hussein, who was a Sunni Muslim. The Iraqi population that he led was 60% Shias, and so, fearing that Iran could influence the Shia majority in his country to rise against him, Saddam launched an attack on Iran. Saudi Arabia saw this as an opportunity to get back at Iran. they funded Saddam in his war escapades against Iran. The Iran-Iraq War was very bloody. Iran had an army of young boys who had been radicalized and made believe that they were fighting a holy war. The boys were each given a key to carry, with the motivation being that if they died, the given key would be used to open their doors in heaven. The war dragged out for 8 long years and culminated when the United States intervened, pulling each side into a ceasefire. Iran felt like Saudi Arabia was an agent of the United States, a country which seeks to control the world. Iran wanted the Arab countries to rely on themselves, and that Saudi Arabia, being allies with the US, was betraying the Islam nations, thus calling for the downfall of the Saudi royal family. As for the United States, Iranians have been taught to hate the US for aiding their arch enemy. Posters of the US presidents have been made a mockery of, and anything Western is condemned with a lot of passion. The rivalry between these two countries is often played out in a lot of wars within the region. Most notable ones include 1. Syria. In 2011, there was a civilian uprising in Syria against the Assad regime, who had become very dictatorial and oppressive. Iran, touting themselves as protectors of the Shia Muslims in the region, came in support of the regime. They gave money and weapons to the government so as to quell the protests. They also deployed Shia militias from neighboring countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Lebanon to help the regime suppress the protests. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, supplied the citizens with arms, encouraging them to step up and fight for their rights. The Assad regime successfully quelled the protests, thanks in part also to the Russian involvement. The next proxy played out in Yemen. A rebel group known as the Houthis rose to overthrow the government. The Yemeni government at the time was allied to Saudi Arabia, and therefore the Saudis were keen on ensuring that the government is not overthrown. Saudi Arabia carried out a lot of bombings in Yemen, which they claimed were a warning to the Houthi rebels. Seeing this, Iran did not sit back. They came in support of the Houthis, supplying them with arms to continue their uprising. The Houthis managed to overthrow the government, and the president had to flee to Saudi Arabia for refuge. Today, the rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia is far from over. Saudi Arabia continues to position itself as the leader of the Sunni world, trying to rally Arab and Muslim states behind its vision. In private diplomacy, Riyadh has repeatedly pushed countries like Qatar and Turkey to limit their political and economic ties with Iran, arguing that Iran's influence destabilizes the region. Iran, meanwhile, continues to project power through its network of militias, from Lebanon's Hezbollah to militias in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. These groups allow Iran to surround Saudi Arabia with layers of influence, applying pressure without engaging in a direct, conventional war. Tehran's message remains unchanged. Saudi Arabia cannot claim leadership of the Islamic world while aligning with the United States and opening its door to Western culture.